My daughter lifted a shining silver ladle, smiling for the guests as if she were hosting some grand holiday special. And then she placed an empty plate in front of me. Not chipped, not forgotten. Empty so clean it almost glowed under the lights. Claudia's voice rang out bright and sharp, cutting straight through the room. Mom does not deserve to eat. She only works. The laughter came fast. Too fast. A burst of nervous titters followed by real amusement from people who barely knew me. Some lifted their phones. A few covered their mouths, not out of kindness, but to hide the widening grins. I felt everything inside me go still, like someone had closed a door from the inside of my chest. Claudia kept serving the others, her bracelets clinking softly. She did not spare me a glance. "Come on, everyone. Make room. Let's keep the line moving," she chirped, as if humiliating me was just another part of the program. Her husband, Elliot, filmed her with that approving smirk he had mastered. I watched him nod like a proud director. Perfect, babe. Real natural. Natural. That was the part that hurt. As if this cruelty came easily to her. Someone behind me whispered, "I thought she was the help." Another said, "No, that's her mom." A long hum of confusion swirled, but it settled quickly. Entertainment always did. I felt my name, my place in the room, shrink to a smudge. My name is Maribel Ann Rowan. I am 69 years old. I raised Claudia alone in Asheville, stitching together her childhood with long shifts and tired hands. I fed her before I fed myself. I taught her everything I knew about kindness, about decency, about standing up for those who have less. And now my daughter was performing a comedy act built on my bones. My mind stayed numb, but something deeper, something old and stubborn snapped awake behind my ribs. The quiet part of me, the part I had spent years silencing for the sake of family peace, finally lifted its head. Claudia kept her spotlight laugh going as she stepped aside to pose with a glass of chilled cider. "Hold on, Elliot." Record from the left. "The lighting is better." Her voice curled in the air, practiced and sweet as a rehearsed monologue. She said nothing to me. She did not have to. The empty plate said enough. I lowered my hands to my lap, steadying myself as the room kept spinning around its star. My breath tightened the way it had the moment I learned what grief felt like decades ago. But this was sharper. Cleaner. A wound without blood. I did not make a scene. I did not rise to defend myself or shout her name. I simply stood. A few people noticed and stepped aside. Unsure if I was going to the kitchen or the bathroom or somewhere they did not care about. Claudia didn't turn. I stepped away from the table and felt my feet carry me toward the front room, toward my purse, toward the keys that had hung by that door for more than 30 years. And as my fingers closed around the metal, I felt a kind of clarity that burned cold. What I did after that moment did not just ruin her night. It destroyed the image she built her entire life around. And it all began with that one empty plate. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the dim light of my living room, the silence stretching around me. And all I could feel was the echo of Claudia's voice from earlier. It pulled me backward, into years I had tried so hard to hold together. I was born and raised in Asheville, tucked between the Blue Ridge Mountains and the hum of small-town life. My mother worked at the Biltmore estate in the laundry division. And when I turned 18, I followed her there. 30 years of washing uniforms, linens, banquet cloths, 30 years of steam, towels, bleach, and the steady rhythm of work that never ended. I never complained. It was honest work, and it kept my daughter safe. Claudia grew up running between the rows of hanging sheets I brought home to fold, treating them like castles and tunnels. She used to climb into my lap after dinner and braid my hair with her tiny fingers. "You're my whole world, Mama," she would say. She meant it then. I remember the weight of those words on nights I thought I might collapse from exhaustion. She kept me going. When she was 10, I became a widow. The man I loved, her father, died in a sudden accident on Interstate 40. I remember the police officer taking off his hat. I remember Claudia crying so hard her breath hitched. I held her all night, whispering that she would always have me. I meant it. And I kept that promise. Even when everything around us felt like it was cracking, I worked double shifts. I packed lunches. I showed up at every school event, even when my feet felt like fire. People told me Claudia looked just like me. She hated hearing that. The first time someone said it in front of her, she forced a smile so tight it trembled. That was the first sign, the first little fracture that she wanted to be something other than what I was. Her middle school years were when the hunger for validation began. She lit up when coaches praised her, when teachers said she was bright. That was normal. But she dimmed when anyone mentioned me. If I came to pick her up in my work uniform, she walked ahead like she didn't know me. When I waved from the bleachers, she pretended not to see. I would tell myself she was growing, changing, figuring herself out. Children do that. They shift, stretch, outgrow things. I never imagined she might outgrow me. One afternoon when she was 15, I heard her laughing on the phone with a friend. "My mom's sweet, but she's plain. She doesn't really get anything modern." I stood in the doorway holding a grocery bag, listening to my daughter talk about me like I was a stranger. She didn't notice me wipe my eyes before stepping inside. As she got older, that distance turned into something sharper. Claudia loved spotlight moments. She loved applause and attention. In high school, she found every stage possible: chorus, theater, pageants. I was proud. I clapped until my hands hurt. She smiled at the crowd. She never looked for me. College took her into a new world. She majored in communications, started dressing differently, speaking differently. When she came home for breaks, she complained about how dated Asheville felt. She moved through my small house like she was visiting a museum. Still, I kept loving her the way I always had. I saved for her, protected her, checked on her, supported every dream she reached for. I told myself she would come back to me someday, that the distance was temporary, that all daughters grow out of their mothers before they grow back toward them. But as the years went on, I felt something slipping, not loudly, not suddenly, just a slow, steady drift. And by the time New Year's Eve arrived, I realized I had been loving a daughter who no longer remembered the woman who raised her. I stood from the couch, steadying my breath, and began walking toward the kitchen. There were years of memories there, and all of them were starting to feel like someone else's life. Claudia met Elliot Pierce during a holiday networking event at a hotel in downtown Asheville. She called me the next morning, her voice bright in a way I had not heard in years. "He's incredible. Mom." A commercial real estate developer, sharp, charming, very polished. She stretched that last word as if she were tasting it for the first time. When they invited me to dinner a few weeks later, I saw exactly what she meant. Elliot shook my hand firmly, his smile practiced and perfect. "Claudia talks about you," he said politely. "She says you're a strong woman." His tone made it sound like a compliment reserved for people who work too hard for too little. Claudia's eyes darted to my cardigan, then back to him. "Mom's simple," she added quickly, trying to soften the gap between us. "But she means well." I swallowed whatever rose up in my throat. The evening felt rehearsed from start to finish. Elliot spoke about development projects, market trends, and expansions. Claudia nodded eagerly beside him, copying his posture, echoing his phrases. I watched her pick up his mannerisms, like a child grabbing shells on a shore she never knew existed until now. Weeks passed, and Claudia's transformation continued. She swapped her thrifted jackets for tailored coats, her casual voice for polished diction, her jokes for Elliot-approved opinions. When she visited, she glanced around my living room like she was scanning it for flaws. She brushed off memories as if they were dust on furniture she meant to replace. The first time I met Elliot's family, I understood why. His parents lived in a large stone house on a hill overlooking the city. His mother, Diane, greeted me with a stiff smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Claudia tells us you worked at the estate for many years," she said. "Such dependable work." I felt the pause more than the sentence. During dinner, they asked Claudia about her future, about how she might elevate her image. Claudia spoke like a woman studying for an exam, repeating Elliot's vocabulary, nodding at his mother's critiques. Every now and then, her gaze slid toward me quick, almost guilty, then away again. At one point, when the table broke into separate conversations, I stepped into the hallway to get some air. Voices drifted from the kitchen. Claudia's voice, low, strained. "I know, Diane, I know," she said. "I'm working on it. Mom does not fit the aesthetic yet." My body went still. Elliot's mother sighed. "Presentation matters, dear. Your life is changing. Some people cannot come with you." Claudia whispered something I could not hear. Then she added, "I'm trying. Please be patient." I backed away before they stepped out. My hands trembled as I returned to the table. Claudia acted normal, but her shoulders stiffened when she saw me sit down. She knew I had heard something. She did not ask what. She did not apologize. From that night on, something subtle shifted. She stopped inviting me places. She stopped taking photos with me. She introduced me to people as my mom. She's very traditional, always with a tight smile. Claudia had found a new life, one she could sculpt and polish and present to the world. And somewhere in the corners of that bright, shiny world, she began tucking me away like a flaw she wished no one would notice. Claudia began using my house the way people use a rented venue, without hesitation or permission, as if the walls had her name carved into them. She would arrive with a tote bag full of decorations, sweeping through the rooms with fast, decisive steps. "Your place just has that rustic charm." "Mom," she said once, waving her hand toward my wooden shelves. "People think it's cozy, authentic. You know, good for photos." I stood near the doorway that day, holding a basket of folded cloths. "You could host at your place," I said. "It's bigger. It's modern." She corrected sharply. "Modern is cold. Here feels nostalgic." She pointed at my kitchen island. "We need that look." Elliot walked in behind her, wearing one of his tailored jackets. He glanced around with the same expression someone gives an old thrift store. "Yeah," he muttered. "This furniture has character. And age. Lots of age." Claudia shot him a look. He pretended not to see it. She turned to me quickly. "Ignore him, Mom. He jokes." It didn't sound like a joke. They held a small gathering that evening, 8 of Claudia's co-workers. I helped set the dishes down, mostly out of habit. Claudia hovered behind me, adjusting placements after I moved things. "Not like that," she whispered. "Please let me handle the details." During the event, conversations flowed, cameras appeared, and Claudia guided people through the living room like a hostess rehearsing her lines. She laughed loudly, posed, nudged Elliot if he wasn't smiling enough. I stayed near the wall, handing out plates when someone asked, smoothing tablecloth edges, refilling pitchers. At one point, Claudia gathered her group near the fireplace. "Everyone squeeze in," she said. "Elliot, get the wide angle." I stepped forward, thinking she wanted me in the frame. Claudia blocked me with a gentle touch to my elbow. Mom, sweetheart, maybe sit this one out. You get anxious in crowds. Remember, I stared at her. I don't get anxious. Oh, it's okay, she said brightly. Louder this time so everyone heard. My mom is more comfortable behind the scenes. The group nodded kindly and shifted in closer for the photo. Elliot held up the phone. Claudia never looked back at me. I stood there, fingers curling around the hem of my sweater, watching my daughter glow in the center of my home. People clapped when Elliot showed them the picture. Claudia corrected her hair, pinned it back, then asked for another. I stepped farther into the background, unnoticed. As the night went on, guests began thanking Claudia. Your place is adorable. Someone told her? Claudia smiled. It's my mom's house, but she lets me use it. The words dropped like coins tossed into a well, small, thoughtless, but echoing in ways that seemed to take something from me each time. By the time the guests left, Claudia was sprawled on my couch. Tonight went well, she said. We should do more events here. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. My voice felt thin, barely there. She claimed my home long before I realized she was taking something far more painful from me, my place in her world. Claudia called in the late afternoon, her voice drenched in a sweetness she only used when she wanted something. Mom, hi. She sang, Are you busy? I have the most exciting idea. I sat at my small kitchen table, sorting through old receipts. I'm listening. I said carefully, so, she drew out the word. Elliot and I were thinking, maybe we could host New Year's Eve at your place this year. Just a small dinner, maybe 15 guests, close friends, nothing overwhelming. I hesitated. And she must have sensed it because she jumped in before I could respond. Your house has that warm, nostalgic charm everyone loves. You know, the kind people feel comfortable in, and I think it would be nice to start the year together. We haven't done that in so long. The way she said together made something warm move in my chest. We had not shared a holiday meal in years. She always had a better offer, a bigger party. Some glamorous plan I never fit into. The thought of having her home not as a hostess, but as my daughter felt like a chance to pull her back toward me. If it means we'll spend time together, I said, then yes, you can host it here. Her relief burst through the phone. Perfect, thank you. Mom, you're the best. Seriously, this will be amazing. We hung up, and for a moment, I let myself feel hopeful. I imagined Claudia helping me prep the dishes we used to make when she was small. I imagined the two of us laughing, maybe even reclaiming something we had lost. Later that evening, I walked past my living room window to close the curtains when I noticed her car in the driveway. I hadn't heard it pull in. Claudia climbed out with Elliot behind her. They weren't coming in, not yet. They stood near her trunk, talking low. I cracked the door just enough to hear, "This is going to blow up my socials," Claudia said, excitement buzzing through every word. Everyone will freak out when they see the setup. It's the perfect backdrop, rustic, nostalgic, totally on trend. Elliot chuckled. Just make sure your mom stays calm. Last thing we need is anything off-brand. Claudia laughed with him. Please, she'll just be grateful we're there. They kept talking, but I closed the door softly before I heard anything else. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. The warmth I'd felt earlier cooled into something thin and uneasy. When Claudia finally knocked, she smiled as if nothing in the world was wrong. Mom, we were just checking how much space we have for the table layout. Do you mind if we measure the dining room? I stepped aside. Go ahead. Inside. She moved through my home like a planner scouting a venue. She didn't ask which dishes I wanted to make. She talked instead about ambience, about aesthetic flow, about lighting angles for photos. Elliot made notes on his phone while she rearranged chairs to test camera frames. At one point, I asked, "Are we cooking together?" She didn't pause. We'll see, I might need you to handle most of it. But it's small, just 15 people. Remember? She said it quickly, almost dismissively, and Elliot smirked behind her. As they stepped back outside, Claudia squeezed my arm. Trust me, Mom. This night is going to be unforgettable. The word lingered after she left. Unforgettable. For her, it meant attention. For me, it meant something else entirely, though I couldn't name it yet. I stood by the window long after their car pulled away, listening to the quiet of my house and feeling that spark of hope flicker under the weight of something heavier, something I chose stupidly to ignore. 3 days after Claudia asked to host the dinner at my house, I was washing dishes when my phone buzzed with a notification. I wiped my hands and glanced at the screen. It was a tagged story from Claudia. The caption read, "Asheville's biggest New Year's bash is happening right here." I frowned. She had told me 15 guests. Maybe she was exaggerating. I clicked the story anyway. It opened to a video of Claudia twirling in my living room. My curtains, my framed pictures blurred behind her. Over 40 amazing people already confirmed. She said to the camera, "This is going to be the party of the year." I dropped the dish towel. When she arrived later that evening with Elliot to go over final touches, I met them at the door. "Claudia," I said, holding my phone, "you told me 15 people." She blinked, then waved her hand. "Mom, come on. You're taking everything so literally." I got excited. Social media exaggerates, it's part of the job. Over 40 guests is not an exaggeration. It is a different event. Elliot stepped in. His tone polite but cold. "Maribel, this is important for her career. Large gatherings help her networking. You want her to succeed, right?" "I want her to tell me the truth," I said quietly. Claudia sighed loudly. "This is why I didn't say anything. You make everything dramatic." I opened my mouth, but she cut me off. "It's not a big deal. Your house can fit everyone. We'll figure it out. Just trust me." The words hit me like a push. I stepped back and let them inside. They moved around the kitchen, opening cabinets, examining counter space. Claudia placed a sheet of paper on the table. "Okay, menu," she announced. "We need rosemary turkey, glazed ham, 4 salads, macaroni casserole, baked rolls, and that sweet potato soufflé you make." "That's a lot of food," I said. "It's New Year's," she replied. Scribbling. "People expect options." Elliot leaned against the counter. "And presentation is everything." Claudia kept writing. "We also need 2 desserts. And definitely your lemon pie. Everyone loves that." I stared at the list. "This is expensive." "Claudia." She didn't look up. "I'll reimburse you." Elliot's voice floated in. "Eventually." That word eventually landed like a slap. Claudia finally glanced up, reading the expression on my face. "Mom, please, you know how busy I am. I can't handle the cooking and the shopping and everything else. I need you, just this once, just this once." She said it like she hadn't asked me to cook for her events all year. I folded the paper slowly. "All right," I said, "bye. I'll handle it." She lit up instantly. "Perfect." Elliot clapped his hands softly. "Great teamwork." I kept my eyes on the list. The numbers spiraled. Ingredients. Portions. Costs that would swallow half my monthly income. I felt resentment bloom in small, sharp edges, poking at places inside me I had kept quiet for too long. Claudia pointed toward the pantry. "Make sure you buy brand name ingredients. My followers notice everything." I looked up at her, and she paused. What she asked? "Nothing." I said, "I'll take care of it." She smiled, satisfied, already moving on to her next thought. Elliot followed her into the hallway, discussing lighting angles for her entrance video. I stayed in the kitchen alone, the grocery list trembling slightly in my hand. Their voices faded as they walked deeper into the house Claudia believed she owned. I stood there until the silence returned, my daughter's laughter echoing faintly through the walls, mixing with a feeling I tried for years to swallow but could no longer pretend wasn't growing. By dawn on December 31st, I was already in the kitchen with my apron tied tight and my hands deep in a bowl of seasoned breadcrumbs. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the oven warming up. I had a turkey to prepare, 2 pies to bake, cornbread batter resting on the counter, and enough salads to feed the 40 guests Claudia had never warned me about. My back ached before the sun even rose. Years of lifting laundry carts at the Biltmore estate had built strength, but also left my joints with a constant tremor. Still, I kept moving. Habit, maybe, or love that had twisted itself into something far heavier than I ever intended to carry. Around mid-morning, while I was sliding the turkey into the oven, the door flew open and Claudia stepped inside with bright energy and a camera already in her hand. "Mom, stay just like that," she said breathlessly. "The lighting is perfect. I need a behind-the-scenes clip." Before I could answer, she angled her phone toward the oven. "Hey, everyone," she chirped into the microphone. "I'm prepping our New Year's dinner. It's going to be gorgeous." I froze. She didn't gesture toward me. She didn't say we're prepping. She didn't even mention I existed. Just, "I'm prepping." She panned slowly around the kitchen, careful not to let my face come into the frame. When she finished recording, she blew out a breath. "Great. Let's get more. Maybe the salad bowls or the pie. I made those," I said softly, wiping my hands on a towel. She blinked at me, as if the words were inconvenient. "Yeah, of course, Mom. But people respond better when they see a certain aesthetic. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. I only knew how it felt. Elliot appeared behind her, wearing an expensive sweater and an expression that suggested he was born giving instructions. "We need continuity," he murmured, scanning the counter. "Claudia, stand next to the bowl. Pretend you're mixing. Look natural." She stepped in front of my cutting board, blocking me completely. I stepped aside without thinking. It had become second nature by then. She lifted the wooden spoon. "Like this." "Yeah," Elliot said, adjusting her elbow. "Smile. Relax your shoulders. Angle your chin." He directed her like a photographer guiding a model. His voice was low and firm. Hers was breathy, eager to impress. They took 3 takes, then 4, then 5. At one point, Claudia laughed. "My followers are going to love this. They think I cook all the time." I stood a few feet away, holding a tray of rolls I'd spent 2 hours kneading. Neither of them looked in my direction. After finishing the prep content, Claudia breezed past me. "Mom, can you finish the sides and check the pie and maybe start another batch of cornbread? People eat a lot at these things." She didn't wait for my answer. Elliot followed her out, murmuring more notes about camera placement and lighting angles. Their voices drifted down the hall, blending into excited whispers about audience engagement and online traction. I stayed in the kitchen, kneading, chopping, stirring, tasting. Time blurred. Every minute of work blended into the next. My hands cramped. My back throbbed. Heat from the oven wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. Hours passed before Claudia reappeared. She glanced at the spread, the turkey perfectly roasted, the pies cooling, the salads mixed, the rolls glistening with butter. "Great," she said. "Everything looks great. Not thank you, not you worked hard, just great." She turned to leave, then paused. "Make sure the table looks elegant. Okay, people will be filming when they arrive." And just like that, she was gone again, vanishing into the world where she shined brightest, leaving me to prepare a feast she would take credit for. By late afternoon, I felt like background noise inside my own home. My footsteps were quieter. my voice barely used, my presence shrinking with every dish I touched. Cooking for my daughter no longer felt like love. It felt like labor she expected, labor she owned, labor she believed she deserved. Somewhere between the cornbread and the pies, something inside me shifted quiet, but sharp enough to leave a mark I could feel long after the kitchen fell silent. By the time the first knock sounded, my legs were already trembling from the hours I had spent on my feet. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door to a group of young people holding phones, ring lights, and glittery gift bags. They breezed past me as if I were part of the doorway. "Is this the place?" one of them asked another, already recording. "Yeah. Claudia said it has that homey vintage vibe," the woman replied. "Homey vintage. My home, my life, my things, reduced to a theme for strangers." More guests poured in, co-workers of Claudia, influencers, friends of Elliot. None of them looked at me long enough to see I was the homeowner. Most walked toward the dining room with their cameras raised, commenting on the setup Claudia had taken credit for. A tall man pointed at me while adjusting his blazer. "Hey, excuse me, can you take our coats?" I stared at him. "I live here." He blinked, confused, then laughed. "Right. Got it." But he still handed me his coat. "From the hall." Claudia called out, "Everyone, make yourselves comfortable." Her voice was bright and polished, floating over the crowd like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. She posed near the fireplace, grabbing Elliot's arm. "Film this," she whispered. I walked into the living room with an empty tray, trying to make room among bodies, laughter, and camera flashes. Someone bumped my shoulder hard enough to make me catch my breath. A woman with bright red lipstick tapped my arm. "Sweetie, could you refill the cider?" She didn't even look at my face, just pushed her glass toward me. "I'm not the help," I said quietly. She paused long enough to glance at me. "Oh," she said, "my mistake." I thought, well, never mind. Her eyes flicked over my plain sweater, the apron around my waist, my tired hands. The judgment was fast and precise. Nearby, I heard someone whisper, "Claudia said her mom loves attention." I expected her to be more involved. Another voice replied, "She hasn't said a word since we got here." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were cruel, but because Claudia had told them something unrecognizable, something strategic. I moved toward the dining area just as Elliot lifted his phone higher. "Claudia. Smile. Perfect. Hold that pose." She stepped aside to let guests admire the food. "All homemade," she announced proudly. I spent all day prepping. My heart clenched. Not from shock, that part died in me hours earlier, but from the realization that not one person questioned her story. A young woman standing beside me sipped her drink and nudged her friend. "Your daughter's amazing," she said to me. "She told us you always want to be part of these things, but you get too shy to say anything. Too shy. Too dramatic. Too anxious. Too everything except who I really was." I swallowed back the sting. She said that. The woman nodded, already distracted by the crowd. "Yeah, funny. Though, you haven't said a word." I opened my mouth, but the room swallowed my voice whole. Around me, 50 strangers celebrated the night in the house I built, with the meal I cooked. Under the lights, I replaced myself, and not one person, not a single one, saw me standing there. The noise in the room had settled into a dull roar by the time Claudia raised her arms and called out, "Everybody, gather around! It's time for dinner." Her voice carried easily over the crowd, bright and polished, like she'd been rehearsing it all week. I stood near the end of the table, hands folded, stomach tight. My back still pulsed from the day's work, but the exhaustion felt distant, unimportant, compared to the heaviness building in my chest. Claudia stepped behind the serving trays. flashing her camera-ready smile. "Let's make this cute," she said to Elliot, who lifted his phone. "Film everything." Guests lined up eagerly, laughing, adjusting their outfits, nudging one another into the frame. Claudia served them generous scoops of turkey, ham, potatoes, salads, every dish she claimed she had cooked. Then she turned toward me. "Mom," she said loudly, "you should get yours at the end. You know, after everyone else." A few people exchanged looks. Others forced polite smiles. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because fighting her in that moment felt impossible. Claudia winked dramatically at Elliot. "Ready," he nodded. "Rolling." She lifted a clean plate mine and held it midair, arms poised for the camera. "Okay, everyone," she announced. "Watch this. It's the funniest part." My breath caught. Claudia placed the empty plate in front of me with a flourish. Not a drop of food, not a crumb, nothing but smooth porcelain and humiliation. "Mom does not deserve to eat," she declared, laughter bubbling in her voice. "She only works." The room erupted, some in awkward chuckles, others in loud, eager laughter. Phones rose instantly. A few people cheered. My cheeks burned. My ears rang. The sound merged into one long wave of something cruel. I stared at the plate. It stared back at me like a mirror. One woman near the table whispered, "Is this staged?" Another answered, "Claudia said her mom loves the attention. Maybe she's doing a bit." Claudia leaned toward me, still smiling. "Come on, Mom, show them your face." "It's content." I lifted my gaze. She wasn't joking. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't even thinking about me. Her eyes were empty flat, cold, focused only on the reaction she was getting. And in that moment, something inside me went silent. Not broken, not angry, just silent, like something important had finally stopped beating. I straightened my back, my hands steadied on the edge of the table. Claudia noticed the change and tilted her head slightly, waiting for me to play along. I didn't. I picked up the empty plate, set it down gently. Then I stepped back from the table. "Mom," she said, her smile faltering for the first time. "Mom, where are you?" I walked past her without answering. "Mom," she called again, irritation creeping into her voice. "You're ruining the shot." People stepped aside as I crossed the living room. Someone asked if I was okay. Someone else laughed nervously, but I kept moving. My eyes fixed on the small wooden hook by the front door. My purse hung there. My keys dangled beside it. And on a lower hook, almost hidden, was the kitchen key, the one I kept to lock it from the outside when I needed to protect food during big family events years ago. I wrapped my fingers around all of them. "Behind me," Elliot muttered. "What is she doing?" Claudia hissed. "She's being dramatic again." I didn't turn around. I walked out of my own house, out of the noise, out of the lights, out of the world Claudia had built without me. The cold air hit my face as soon as the door shut behind me. I heard Claudia yank the door open. "Mom." "Come back inside." I stepped off the porch and kept going. As I reached my car, something small and metallic pressed into my palm, the kitchen key. It felt heavier than it ever had. It felt like a choice. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. I drove with both hands tight on the wheel, the road stretching out in a blur of streetlights and cold mountain air. I did not know where I was going until the sign appeared: Merriman Avenue Lodge. A place I had passed 100 times, but never stepped into. The parking lot was almost empty. The neon sign flickered weakly, but it felt like the only place in the world that had room for me. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of pine cleaner and old carpet. A young man at the counter looked up from his tablet. "Evening? Need a room?" My voice cracked. "Yes, just for the night." He handed me a key card without asking questions. and I was grateful for that mercy. The hallway was quiet. When I stepped into the small room, just a bed, a lamp, and a window overlooking the dark road, I locked the door twice. The moment the latch clicked, my knees buckled. I dropped onto the edge of the bed and let the tears come. Unstoppable and raw, they fell onto my hands, my lap, my shirt. I pressed my palms to my face, the ache in my chest growing sharper with each breath. I cried until my throat burned, until the humiliation replayed in flashes. I couldn't escape Claudia's voice, the empty plate, the laughter. When the sobs finally eased, I sat there in the dim light, shaking. My whole life had been built around one person, and that person had looked at me like I was nothing. I reached for my phone. 1 missed call, then 3, then 8, all from Claudia, a few from unknown numbers guests, probably confused because the help had walked out. I ignored them. Instead, I opened her social media page, and there she was, smiling, glowing, posing in my living room as if it belonged to her. She had posted 9 short videos in the hour since I left. New Year's dinner. Success one caption read, "Cooked with love." Said another, she had filmed my turkey, my pies, my cornbread, my salads. She narrated about her recipes. She thanked brands that never sponsored anything. She played hostess in a home she didn't pay for, with food she didn't cook, with guests I didn't know. Then came the photos. Group shot by the fireplace. Candid laugh at the dining table, a toast with her glass raised high. Not one image included me, not one mention, not one hint I existed at all. As if I had never stood in that kitchen, as if I had not cooked 16 hours, as if I had not raised her from the time she was a crying child who braided my hair and called me her world. I scrolled slowly, the realization settling like stones in my stomach. She had been rewriting our life long before tonight. In every post, every caption, every curated moment, she erased the parts of her that came from me, the quiet, the simple, the ordinary, the real. She replaced them with a glossy version she could be proud of. A version where her mother was a shadow. My reflection in the window caught my eye. I hardly recognized the exhausted woman staring back. I sat up straighter. For the first time all night, my breath came steady, not because the pain was gone, but because something else was beginning to form underneath it, something fragile, but alive. A shift, a decision. I put the phone down on the bedside table and wiped my face with the back of my hand. There was no going back to the woman who swallowed everything quietly, not after tonight, not after the plate. I woke to the buzzing of my phone, sharp and insistent in the quiet lodge room. For a moment, I didn't recognize where I was. The thin curtains, the humming heater, the flat scent of industrial detergent. It all felt unfamiliar. Then the memory of the night before hit me so hard my chest tightened. I reached for the phone. 97 notifications, most from Claudia, none beginning with Mom. I'm sorry. The first message read, "Where did you go? This isn't funny." The next people are asking questions. Come back and open the kitchen. Then Mom, seriously, you're being childish. Another one from Elliot. Your behavior tonight was incredibly unprofessional. Unprofessional, a word people use for employees, workers, staff, not mothers. I kept scrolling. A guest whose name I didn't know wrote, "We need dessert." Claudia says you locked the kitchen. Please return. Another message arrived from a different number. You really ruined the vibe. Super rude. Then another. Just open the door. Why make this stressful? My fingers trembled slightly. None of them cared about what Claudia did. They cared about their evening, their content, their convenience. Another text from Claudia. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. This is beyond dramatic. I whispered into the room. I embarrassed you, but there was no one to hear it except myself. A call tried to come through. I let it ring. Another followed, and another. I turned on silent mode. Then a long message appeared. Mom, you need to fix this. People think you're unstable. Please come home before this gets worse. Fix this. I let the words sit there. Then Elliot sent his own sermon. You made Claudia look bad. If this circulates, it's on you. Be an adult and clean up the mess. Clean up the mess. The same way they expected me to clean their dishes, their parties, their public image. My throat tightened, but not from tears this time. A new message arrived from another unknown number. Just one sentence. Someone recorded everything. I stared at the words. My pulse quickened. I typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared. Then a video thumbnail. I tapped it. The clip opened with Claudia holding the empty plate. Her voice sharp and bright. Mom doesn't deserve to eat. She only works. The camera caught the guests laughing. The exact moment her smile twisted. The flash of discomfort on nearby faces. It caught my face too quiet. Stunned. It caught everything. A message followed. I didn't think it was funny. People need to see this. Another text came seconds later. From the same number, I'm sending it to you first because it's yours to decide. I replayed the video, not because I needed to see it again, but because for the first time, the truth wasn't mine alone to carry. Someone else had seen what I saw. Someone else had felt what I felt. Someone else didn't laugh. My phone buzzed again. Claudia, Mom, pick up. You're blowing this out of proportion. Then, you're making me look bad. Please stop. And then, finally, as if she remembered to sound gentle, I love you. Just come home. The I love you felt as hollow as the plate she handed me. I set the phone down slowly. My reflection in the dark screen looked different, tired. Yes, but steadier. The cold air from the old heater brushed against my skin, grounding me. There were 97 notifications on my phone. None of them had been apologies. But one message, one anonymous truth, sat there like a match waiting for a spark. I pulled into my driveway at exactly 1:42 in the morning. The street was quiet, but my house was still lit up like a stage no one had bothered to close the curtain on. Cars were parked crookedly along the curb. Music thumped faintly through the walls. Laughter drifted out in thin, nervous pieces. My hands didn't shake when I stepped out of the car. Not anymore. I walked up the porch steps, unlocked the front door, and pushed it open. The room froze. 20, maybe 25 guests stood scattered around the living room. Mid-sentence, mid-sip, mid-laugh, they stared at me like I had interrupted something sacred. Someone's phone slipped a little in their hand. Claudia stood near the fireplace. Mascara smudged, hair deflated from hours of posing. She looked smaller than she had earlier, wrinkled at the edges, like a poster that had been peeled off a wall. Mom, she breathed, stepping forward. Thank God, we need to talk. I lifted one hand. She stopped instantly. The room felt the shift. A subtle tilt of gravity. Even Elliot, who always had something to say, froze with his mouth half open. I closed the door behind me with a soft click. Not slamming. Not dramatic. Just final. My voice came out steady. Everyone, stay where you are. A couple exchanged glances. One woman cleared her throat, but no one moved. I took 2 steps into the room. My shoes crunched on something, maybe a broken ornament, maybe a crushed napkin. But it didn't matter. Claudia tried again. Mom, please. Let's go talk in the kitchen. I looked at her. The kitchen is locked. Elliot muttered. You're being unreasonable. My gaze snapped to him. Do not interrupt me. He closed his mouth so fast his teeth clicked. I turned back to Claudia. You Had something to say. Claudia swallowed visibly, her hands twisted together. I was just worried. You left so suddenly. One of the guests whispered under their breath. She left because of the plate. Another shushed them. I heard it anyway. Claudia kept talking. People were confused. You scared everyone. We didn't know where you went. You didn't ask where I went. I said, you asked me to come back and unlock the kitchen. Another ripple of silence moved through the room. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but she couldn't. She knew I had read every message. She tried a softer tone. Mom, you're upset. I get it. It was a joke. Everyone knew it was a joke. I stepped forward. Did you laugh? She blinked. What? When you handed me an empty plate in front of 50 strangers. Did you laugh? Her eyes darted around the room. She lowered her voice. This isn't the time. It's the time I chose, I said. Elliot stepped in front of her, his voice low but sharp. Maribel, enough. You're ruining the evening. I stared at him. The evening was ruined long before I walked out. Someone on the couch murmured in agreement. Claudia whipped around, glaring at them, then turned back to me. A tremble crawled up her throat. Can we please go outside and no? I said, we will talk here. In front of the people you wanted to impress. The room tensed. Claudia's breath hitched. Mom, please. She reached for my arm, and I moved it out of her reach. The shift was visible like something broke in the air between us. Not loudly, but undeniably. For the first time in years, Claudia stepped back from me, not because she wanted to, because she felt she had to. I looked around the room at the faces that had laughed hours earlier and felt something fierce settle into place. A clarity I hadn't felt since Claudia was little. I came back. I said, voice low but clear, not to fix anything, not to clean up, not to save this night. I looked directly at my daughter. I came back to be heard. The words were there before I even knew how to shape them. Years of swallowing pain had sharpened them for me. Claudia stood a few feet away, hands knotted together, mascara smeared at the corners of her eyes. The room around us held its breath. Phones hung halfway in the air, some pointed down, some pointed directly at us. I looked at her and spoke her full name. The way I had when she was little and in trouble. Claudia Rowan Pierce. Her chin lifted slightly. Mom, this is not do not interrupt me. I said. The tone surprised even me. It was steady, calm, final. She closed her mouth and stared. You wanted an audience tonight. I went on. You wanted people to see you, to see your life, to see how beautiful and successful and adored you are. I took a step closer. Now they will see what it cost. Her throat moved as she swallowed. Mom, please, can we just, Claudia? The way I said her name stopped her again. I took a breath that felt like it came from somewhere deep and old. I have spent almost 70 years on this earth. I spent more than 30 of those years working at the Biltmore Estate Laundry, standing on aching feet so you could eat, so you could study, so you could live in a house that did not leak when it rained. I came home every night with my hands raw from bleach and hot water. I never once told you no when you needed something. A tear slid down her cheek. A guest near the hallway lifted their phone a little higher. When your father died on that highway. I said, my voice softening for a moment. I held you while you cried so hard you could not breathe. I promised you that as long as I was alive, you would never be alone. I meant it. I worked double shifts. I sold my wedding ring to pay for your school trip in 7th grade. I skipped meals when money was tight so your plate would be full. She shook her head, eyes shiny. I know you did. I am grateful. Grateful I let the words sit there. Grateful looks different from this. Claudia, her lips trembled. I sat in every auditorium seat I could afford. I continued. I watched you sing, act, perform. I clapped until my hands hurt. I saved every program with your name on it. I kept them in a box in my closet like they were gold. You know what I remember from those nights. You walking off stage and running straight to your friends, to your teachers, to anyone except the woman who ironed your costume at 2 a.m. She looked down at the floor. I kept going. When you went to college, I cried in my car the whole drive home. Not because I did not want you to grow, but because I was proud, because I knew how hard I had fought to get you there. I picked up extra shifts. I baked for neighbors and sold pies every week so you would not need loans. I told people that one day you would shine, and you did. I spread my hands, feeling the weight of the room watching. You shone so brightly that you decided you no longer wanted anyone to see the little house in Asheville or the mother who smelled like detergent. You began to edit me out of your life like I was a stain. Claudia's shoulders shook. That is not fair. It is honest. I said, I took another step until there was almost no space between us. You brought your new world into my home and treated me like hired help. I said, you told your husband's family I do not fit the aesthetic. You told your friends I get anxious, that I do not like being in photos. You used me when you needed free labor, free space, free food, and then tonight, in the house I pay for with the bones of my body. You handed me an empty plate and told 50 people I do not deserve to eat. Claudia began to cry. Full silent tears now. I was joking. I thought people knew that. I shook my head. You did not care if they knew. You cared if they laughed. Her mouth opened, then closed again. You have no idea what it felt like to stand there, I said, to hear you say those words and see people laugh, to see your husband smirking behind a camera, to watch strangers look at me like I was the punchline. A man near the back shifted uncomfortably. A woman lowered her gaze, so someone else kept filming, the red light unblinking. When you were small, I continued, my voice quiet but firm, you used to braid my hair and tell me I was your whole world. Somewhere along the way, that little girl disappeared, and in her place, there is a woman who can look her mother in the face and strip away her dignity for entertainment. Claudia reached toward me again. Mom, I get it. All right, I went too far. I can apologize online. I can fix this. We can spin it as a misunderstanding. Please, just say something that helps. I stared at her hand. Everything for you is image. She let her hand fall. For years I told myself you would come back to me. I said that this was a phase, that the distance, the lies, the edits were temporary. I told myself that if I kept saying yes, if I kept cooking, hosting, helping, you would remember the mother who carried you, not the version you cut out of your photos. I looked into her eyes and felt something inside me release. I was wrong. I said simply. Claudia flinched like the words had weight. Behind her, Elliot finally spoke. All right. This has gone on long enough. People do not need to hear family drama like this. You are making her look awful. A low murmur rippled through the guests. I turned my head toward him. She did that herself. He scoffed. You should feel lucky she even wanted to include you. The sound that rose from my chest was not quite a laugh. Include me. In my own house. I stepped back so I could see all of them, the cameras. The guilty faces. The curious ones who treated this as entertainment. Everyone in this room saw what she did. I said, some of you recorded it. Some of you laughed. Some of you looked away. None of you stopped her. No one spoke. I raised my chin. I have spent decades being the quiet woman in the background. The one who works, who brings food, who disappears when the pictures are taken. Tonight, that ends. Claudia pressed her hands to her face and cried harder. But I did not reach for her this time. I let the silence settle over us. Thick and heavy, like the truth finally had a place to sit. For a long, tense moment, the room stayed frozen. Claudia stood in front of me with her hands trembling. Mascara streaked across her cheeks. Elliot hovered behind her, jaw tight with resentment. The guests shifted uncomfortably, whispering to one another, uncertain whether to stay or leave. I drew in a slow breath and spoke clearly. "Get out." A few people blinked, unsure they heard correctly. Claudia jolted forward. "Mom, no, you can't do that. This is my event. It is my house," I said. "Leave." A man near the hallway swallowed hard. "Ma'am, maybe we can—" I pointed at the door. "Now?" The force in my voice startled even me. Chairs scraped the floor. People began gathering their coats, muttering apologies they should have said earlier. Claudia's panic erupted. "Stop! Nobody leave!" She spun toward the group. "This is a misunderstanding. Sit down, please." No one listened. A woman clutching a glittery purse stepped around her. "I'm sorry," she whispered to me. "This whole thing, it was awful." Elliot barked. "Excuse me. You all promised to stay for content." Someone else snapped back. "We didn't sign up to watch a family meltdown." Another added. "And we definitely didn't sign up to be part of bullying." Claudia's face drained of color. "This is getting out of hand." I walked past her and opened the front door wide. Cold air rushed in, sweeping through the room like a broom. Everyone out. I repeated, "You are guests in my home, and your time here is over." They began filing out faster now. Heads down, eyes anywhere but on Claudia. A young man paused beside me. "Just so you know," he murmured. "A lot of us recorded what happened. People aren't going to see this the way she planned." He stepped into the night before I could answer. Claudia's breathing hitched. "You recorded it," she asked him, voice shrill. "Delete it." "You cannot post that." He didn't look back. Claudia's panic rose into hysteria. "Mom, do something. They'll ruin me. They'll destroy my brand." I faced her. "You destroyed it yourself." Her mouth opened, then closed again. Another woman spoke up timidly. "I recorded it too. Mostly because I couldn't believe someone would humiliate their mother like that." That admission fell into the room like a stone. Elliot stepped forward. Furious. "You have no right to record her. You will delete it, or we will—" "You will do nothing," I said. "This is my home. I decide what happens here." He shot me a venomous glare. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I ignored him. The last few guests brushed past us and disappeared into the cold night. When the door finally shut, silence fell heavy and exhausted. Claudia stood in the middle of the room, shaking. "Mom, please, we can fix this. We can spin it as a misunderstanding. You just have to help me. You always help me." "No," I said simply. She staggered as if the word itself had weight. I walked past her toward the kitchen doorway and held out my hand. "Give me your phone." She clutched it to her chest. "No, it's mine." "I'm not taking it," I said. "I'm giving you instructions." Her eyes darted nervously. "You have 24 hours, I said. Remove every post, every video, every story that uses my image, my home, my food, or my labor. Everything." "That's impossible," she whispered. Elliot scoffed. "You can't tell her what to do with her brand." I turned fully toward him. "If she doesn't, the world will see every angle of what she did. And they already have multiple recordings." Claudia's knees buckled. She gripped the arm of the sofa. "Mom, people will think I'm a monster." I met her trembling gaze. "You should have thought about that before you treated me like one." She tried to speak, but no words came out. I stepped back. 24 hours. "Claudia, clean your mess. All of it." The last of the night's noise faded from the house. She stood alone in the quiet, her world beginning to crack under the weight of witnesses she never expected. The video leaked before sunrise. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, the quiet settling around me like a blanket, when my phone lit up with messages from neighbors, co-workers from the estate, even an old friend I had not spoken to in years. Have you seen this? It's everywhere. Your daughter. My God. I opened one of the links. There she was. Claudia holding the empty plate. Laughing. Posing. Tossing her hair toward the camera like humiliation was something glamorous. The clip showed everything, the crowd laughing, Elliot filming, my expression when she placed the plate in front of me, the final moment of silence before I walked away. Someone had added captions. Influencer humiliates her own mother for content. This is what entitlement looks like. Protect older women from their own children within hours. The video spread through local Asheville gossip pages, then regional pages, then nationwide threads. It grew on its own, fed by people who recognized something ugly in it. Something they had seen before in their own families. By noon, Claudia's follower count had dropped dramatically. She posted a shaky video trying to control the damage. This was taken out of context. She insisted. My mom jokes with me all the time. People are twisting it, but the comments turned quickly. Your mom didn't look like she was joking. You treated her like staff. You lied about cooking. Your mom deserves better. Her brand partners began releasing statements, first subtle, then blunt. We are pausing our collaboration with Claudia Pierce. Our company does not condone elder disrespect. By evening, Elliot was at my door. He didn't knock gently. He barged in as if the house still belonged to them. You need to fix this, he said, pacing, running his fingers through his perfect hair. She's losing everything. Do you understand everything? Sponsorships. Partnerships. My company won't even let her attend events. They think she's a liability. I set my teacup down. I did not leak anything. That does not matter, he snapped. People think you're the victim. Say something supportive. Make it clear she didn't mean it. No. He stopped pacing. Excuse me. No, I repeated. I am not protecting her from something she did to herself. Claudia appeared behind him, looking nothing like the polished woman who had mocked me 2 nights earlier, her hair messy, her eyes swollen, her voice small. Mom, please, they are tearing me apart. I looked at her carefully. Are you sorry for what you did? Or are you sorry people saw it? She opened her mouth, closed it again, then collapsed into a chair. I'm sorry, it got out, she whispered. That was all I needed to hear. I stood. I am not making statements. I am not recording videos. I am not defending you. Elliot scoffed loudly. So you're just letting her burn. She lit the match. I said. I did nothing but walk away. Neither of them spoke. Claudia lifted her face, streaked with tears. What am I supposed to do now? I didn't answer. I simply walked past her and opened the front door. She stared at me from the hallway, shaken, small, stripped of the world she cared about more than her own mother. For the first time in years, I felt no guilt. Her downfall wasn't mine to carry. It never had been. The next New Year's Eve did not arrive with glitter or noise. It arrived quietly, like a breath I had been holding for too long and was finally ready to release. I was 69 years old, and for the first time in my life, the guest list in my house was mine. Maribel, I brought the potato salad, Mrs. Green said as she stepped inside, balancing a big glass bowl in her arms. She went to my church and never missed a chance to fuss over everyone else's plate before her own. Put it on the table. Love, I told her. We will make room. Behind her came Anita from next door with a pan of baked chicken, and then Rosa with homemade flan, and then 3 more women from the church group, laughing as they shrugged off their coats. There were only 8 of us in total. No cameras, no ring lights, no one here to build a brand, just women who had lived long enough to know that survival deserved to be celebrated. This smells incredible, Anita said, leaning over the table. You sure you did not cook all of this yourself again? Not this year, I said. This year I share the work. They laughed, a soft, warm sound that filled the house in a way that felt different from the year before. There was no strain in it, no performance, no cruelty. As we moved around the living room, laying out plates and forks, Mrs. Green nudged me. "How are you feeling tonight?" Really, I thought about it before I answered. "Lighter," I said, "not because everything is perfect, just because I am not carrying what is not mine anymore." She squeezed my shoulder. That is what boundaries feel like. A few months earlier, I had sat in a lawyer's office with a stack of papers in front of me. The woman across the desk adjusted her glasses and spoke gently. "Once we file this, Claudia Rowan Pierce will no longer be listed as your beneficiary. Are you sure this is what you want?" "Ms. Rowan." I had signed every page slowly, the pen steady in my hand. "I am sure. We updated my will. We removed Claudia from my estate plan. We changed emergency contacts. We placed my savings into a trust that could not be touched by anyone but me and the charity group I chose." I walked out of that office feeling like someone had slipped a heavy bag off my shoulders. 2 weeks later, I went to the bank and sat with a clerk I had known for years. "Remove my daughter's name from any accounts where she still has access," I said. "Joint cards, emergency authorizations, everything." He double-checked the forms. "You understand this means she cannot do anything on your behalf. Even in an emergency, I understand." I said, "If there is an emergency, I will call people who do not humiliate me for entertainment." The certified letter to Claudia went out the same day. She texted once when she received it. "Mom, what is this?" I did not respond. Then she called. The phone rang and rang and rang until I let it go to voicemail. Her voice came through strained, angry, desperate. "You cannot just cut me off. You are still my mother. You do not get to erase me from everything." I sent one final message, short and clear. "My lawyer has copies of all documents. Respect is the only door that opens here." I blocked her number after that. Now, in my warm living room, the clock on the wall ticked closer to midnight. Rosa poured sparkling cider into mismatched glasses. Anita turned down the music so we could talk without shouting. "Have you heard from her?" Mrs. Green asked carefully. "Through other people," I said. "A cousin told me she moved into a small apartment after sponsors dropped her. Elliot's company cut ties. Some of her old friends stopped inviting her to things once the video would not disappear. She tells everyone it was bad luck. The world knows it was not." Rosa nodded slowly. "Life has a way of finishing what we cannot." I looked around at the women in my home. We had all been bruised in different ways by husbands, children, parents, systems. But here we were, standing on our own feet, sharing food we chose to share. My phone buzzed once on the counter. A new number. A short preview appeared on the screen. "I am trying to be better. Mom, I am in therapy. I want to talk. Please." I read it. I let it sit there. Then I turned the phone face down and walked back to the table. "Come eat," I called to the women. "The food is getting cold and the year is getting ready to end without us." We gathered around the table, plates filling with food made by hands that respected their own work. There was turkey, potato salad, chicken, rice, flan, cornbread. I took a little of everything, and finally, after years of serving everyone else first, I sat down with my plate full. Mrs. Green lifted her glass. "To new years that belong to us. We all raised ours. To women who stop apologizing for needing respect," Anita added. "To mothers who learn they are more than what their children think of them," Rosa said quietly. Our glasses touched. As the moment stretched warm between us, I felt something inside my chest settle for the first time in a very long time. I had not ruined my daughter. I had not cursed her. I had simply stepped out of the shadow she built for me and let her own choices stand in the light. Later that night, when the dishes were rinsed and the house had gone quiet again, I sat at the table with a cup of tea and my phone. I opened the voice recorder and pressed the red button. "If you are listening to this," I said softly, "and you recognize any piece of your own life, do something kind for yourself. Hit like, leave a comment, subscribe, whatever this platform gives you to stay connected, because you deserve to stand next to people who see you." I stopped the recording and saved it. Not for Claudia, not for anyone who laughed at that empty plate. For me, for whoever needed to hear that they were allowed to choose themselves. Then I turned off the lights one by one and went to bed, feeling, at last, that the new year truly belonged to me.